All right, so welcome everybody, and welcome those of you on the stream. I'm Lisa Caywood. I am a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Brocade, in case you couldn't tell from the uniform. I'll be kicking things off and then talking a little bit on the first session, then I'll hand it off to my colleagues. So who is Brocade? Oh, excuse me, first of all, I'll let you absorb this a little bit. We'll mostly be staying with the here and now today, but in case we wander off down the road into the bright and sunny future, please don't sue us. All right. Okay, so who is Brocade? Brocade was founded in 1995 as a fiber channel company, Stephen's favorite technology. We have since grown by leaps and bounds to 4,100 employees. We're headquartered right here in San Jose with offices around the world. Brocade acquired Foundry in 2009, and that's how Brocade got into the Ethernet business. We also acquired Vyatta at the very end of 2012, and that brought in the vRouter. We already had the V80X, the virtual load balancer, from Brocade itself, but we've kind of consolidated a lot of the software networking into a single business unit now, really focused on driving networking from a software perspective going forward. In the immortal words of my colleague, John Hudson, we make stuff. We make networking stuff. We make fiber channel stuff. We make Ethernet stuff. We make stuff for campus stuff for data center, and now a lot of software networking stuff, the vRouter, the virtual ADX, which is the virtual load balancer, as well as our controller. And I'll be talking about that in a little bit. Mr. Hill kindly reminded me that we need a Gartner slide in any intro deck. So here it is.
And it turns out that we have quite a few fans of Gartner slides in the room.
Absolutely.
I found my own Gartner slide.
I know that you're a power user, and that's a good thing because official Gartner quote policy does not allow us to use quotes out of context. So there are actually a number of wonderful things that Gartner has said about Brocade, and so you're more than welcome to log into the corporate Gartner accounts that I know you all have, and I know that Ivan is a power user, and search on Brocade and find what they have to say about us. All right. So today's agenda, I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to mostly be focusing on how you actually can consume our controller. If you want to know the inner workings, the deep technical inner workings of the controller, there is an hour-long video on the Brocade NFD 8 page because we went through that in some detail last time. I will hand it off fairly quickly to my colleague, Mr. McBride back there. He is from the vRouter team, and he'll be kind of talking through use cases that involve both SDN and NFV along with kind of more traditional hardware-based networking. Mostly to kind of get you guys a flavor for how these things can come together in a practical, real-world scenario. John will talk about what we're doing on the VDX front, which becomes progressively more interesting as you move forward. And then we'll round things out with a little preview of some of the SDN applications work we're doing. And then I will hand it off to Mr. Bouchong, the legendary Mr. Bouchong, who is doing his first Net Field Day here at Brocade, to bring us home. Okay, so I know some of you, this is old hat, some of you are kind of just getting your feet wet with SDN, and may or may not be familiar with the OpenDaylight project in particular. So what is OpenDaylight? Why OpenDaylight? What is this stuff? OpenDaylight is an open source controller that was chartered under the Linux Foundation about two and a half years ago. Brocade was a founding member, as were Cisco, IBM, and a number of the usual suspects, as well as a bunch of startups. It is now in its second release. The first release was Hydrogen. It's now on Helium. Helium was released last fall. Our controller is effectively 100% OpenDaylight. So what we have done here is we pull down the community code. We do this several times a week. compile it, make sure it has, it's free from bugs and all of those good things. Anything that we identify as a bug or a feature, an enhancement that we want to include in the controller, we upstream back to the community. So that the core controller here is always in sync with the OpenDaylight community code. Anything that we do that is extra special sauce, Brocade special sauce, we have separately outside of the controller so that we can always maintain consistency with the community code. So it's not, once we upstream, it has to go through the community process and be accepted and things like that. But it's staggered, but it's always in very close parallel.
So when you pull down the code, do you pull the whole thing, the whole kitchen sink, or just the select parts?
Nope, whole thing.
But you don't document the whole thing in your documentation. You just document a few bits and pieces. We
are in the process of bring all the documentation together. That is true.
That would be cool.
Yeah. And it's a very much a moving target too. So the documentation is a little bit behind. It's still, frankly, better than the community documentation. In terms of the architecture of the controller, it's your basic middleware model, right? We've got a number of protocols on the southbound side that the controller recognizes and will work with. So, OpenFlow is the obvious one. We've invested quite a bit in netconf, also SNMP, BGP, et cetera. The middle layer, this is kind of really the guts of the controller, is the service abstraction layer, and that's effectively creates generic models of the specific devices underneath that the controller is managing, and then provides the model framework for the API, which can be developers would be developing to. Questions on this? Okay. If you want to get more detail on this, as I was mentioning earlier, we spent about an hour on this last fall at NFD 8. So go ahead and take a look at that video on the Brocade NFD 8 page. And of course, if you have questions, guys know where to find me. So I mentioned our process, right? We pull stuff down, we make enhancements, bug fixes, what have you, and then we contribute those back up. We've also done a fair amount in terms of actually enhancing the controller. We've made several contributions in the service abstraction layer and a number of areas, specific service functions within the controller. So we're actually putting a fair amount of muscle actually back into the community. And then, as I mentioned, any applications that we, or special features that we would want to offer, we do those as separate applications, so that this is always maintained consistency with the core code. Oh, and just in case it wasn't totally clear here, there is no requirement that you use Brocade hardware or software devices with the controller. So the SDN stack, as far as we're concerned, is entirely modular. So this is something you can use with our switches, other switches, what have you. Basically anything that works with the community code, that works with one of those protocols that is in the community code, should work with our controller, and vice versa.
So there's sorry. No. I was going to say, so there's that bit about should work. If it works with the community one, should work with that one.
Yep.
What's that mean from a support perspective?
Glad you asked.
Because should work. Like
yes.
We all know things should work, and then I ring support, and they're like,
it's a very it's a very good question. So we are in the process of going through and actively testing, sort of all the usual suspects. But in terms of the support model, anything that is documented as supporting one of those interfaces that is in the community code, we will support that interaction, that interface. And if we find, for example, that there is a problem with the handshake between the controller and a Cisco device, for example, and it's there's a problem with that interface, we'll work directly with either that vendor, or if we can't find the source of the problem, we can take it to the community, because it'll affect everybody. And so that's on us. That's a commitment that we've made from a support perspective. It's not, oh, we'll go talk to them, or if there's a problem with the handshake, we'll take care of it.
Cool.
Your applications that are on top of the controller.
Yeah.
Do you support them being used on switches from other vendors?
As long as it's going through the controller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, we're just starting to spin up the application effort. This is all early days, right? So I think one of the applications that we've got in the works is actually leveraging the hybrid port capabilities on the MLX specifically. So in that sense, because it is leveraging the capabilities of that, the particular capabilities of that hardware platform, that's one you can only use with our stuff right now. But in principle, if it's more of a generic application, like for example the Path Explorer application, which you can easily find along with, it actually comes with a download. That's something you can use with anybody's stuff. Okay, so what does this mean? What do you get? We have a free download. You can manage up to 5 network nodes, whether it's hardware nodes, software nodes, doesn't matter. It's free for 1 year. You also get 60 days of free support. So this is a great way to get it started, put it in your lab, start playing with it, get your head around what it is and how it works and what it's good for. Beyond that, 1 and 3 year subscription licenses, $100 a node. Bit of a discount if you go for the 3-year subscription license, and that includes support as well. You notice that we have 2 boxes here. One is for operations, one is for developers. A lot of the controllers in the market, especially those coming from enterprise-focused companies, are really looking at SDN more through the lens of manageability, orchestration, automation. So it's sort of NMS on steroids. We really look at SDN from 2 perspectives. That is certainly very important, but the other promise of SDN, and this was something we heard way back at the OpenFlow Symposium 2.5 years ago, when the Yahoo and Google guys were pounding on the table saying, I want features that I can build myself. I don't want to be waiting on my vendors. That's the programmability piece. And so OpenDaylight's a great platform for that because it is an open source platform. Everybody has access to the code. And so we really want that our controller to be a platform for development. And so we're building a lot of tools, and a lot of our documentation will increasingly be focused on supporting developers to build applications for the controller. So the developer version is a little bit different. We're not assuming that it's licensed differently. We're not assuming that you're going to be running in production the same thing that you're developing on. So that's a per instance license, so per server, as opposed to a per node license. Questions? All right. So this is how you get to the free download. You can get through it. You can just Google it, or go to the Brocade controller page, or any number of other ways to get there. We've tried to make it as painless as possible. We do need your real name, email, and company name to enable the support permissions, and then we need your country for export compliance purposes. But other than that, it's hopefully as painless as possible. In terms of what you run it with, you don't have to get new gear. There's no requirement that you get new gear. You can run it with existing OpenFlow enabled gear or any of the other device protocols that we were talking about. You can run it again Mininet instances. You can run it with OVS. So other than the cost of your time, it should be completely free to start kicking the tires on SDN. Okay, and you'll have help. So in addition to the formal tax support, we have really started building out our presence on GitHub. This is the GitHub page. By the way, if you go one click up on the Brocade Com umbrella on GitHub, you'll also find a page dedicated to the SDK for the VDX API. So if you want to play around with that. So what is here is download links for the controller itself, documentation, a link to the Brocade DevNet site, which basically mirrors most of this content. It's just that some people are more familiar with the Brocade community site, some people are more familiar with GitHub, so we're kind of trying to meet people where they are. A bunch of tutorials on developing apps for this controller. and then also links to useful OpenDaylight pages. This is a snapshot of the blog. So, and it's, we'll be adding more content each week. These all have these very useful how-to videos, step-by-step, how to install the controller, how to get it working with Mininet, how to build an application. We'll be adding more. If there are specific topics you'd like us to provide information on, just let us know. Questions, comments, put them in the wiki or ping us. We want this to be very much a community-run and community-led effort as much as possible. Because, frankly, we're all learning this together. SDN is a brand new thing. And this is not going to work if everybody's sort of sitting back and waiting to be spoon-fed. We have to build applications. We have to do that as an industry. We have to figure out what the needs are and how we can support them. So to that end, right? This is obviously not something that everybody's going to be doing. We have some customers who have, they have developers on their staff, but they want them focused on other things, and so they've said to us, this is the application we want, can you build it for us? And we have said yes, that's a professional service offering that we have. In other cases, it's just, we have developers on staff and we want to go do it ourselves. Help us get started, great. But the real opportunity here is actually for VARs, SIs, even independent consultants who want to be able to get sort of out of the box fulfillment business and further up the value stack. And we're looking at a number of programs. We're in the process of building those out right now in terms of supporting those people and helping them commercialize their applications.